Okay.
Hi, good evening. My name is Guadalupe Mendez. I'm a local poet, former text poet laureate, founder of Tintero Projects, and a recipient of the inaugural group of the BIPOC Arts.
2023. We say that it's 2023, just it's easier.
So that group.
Thanks, Lupe.
Hi.
Miriam.
Hi, my name is Miriam Damaris Maldonado. I always say I'm from Puerto Rico. I don't know why I need to say this all the time. And I'm a poet and social worker. I work with the community. I'm the founder of Colectiva Feminista Colibri. I'm also working at the Público Press. I'm not gonna say everything I do, but I'm also the recipient of the 2023 BIPOC awardee. I'm glad to be here and encourage everybody to apply.
Thanks so much, y'all. I'm going to, again, let's just say the BIPOC Arts and Networking Fund is a revolutionary arts ecosystem that empowers BIPOC artists, organizations, and communities in Greater Houston area with transformative opportunities to dream, connect, collaborate, and create. That is the vision that we have developed since after the first round of funding. And as an overview, we're going to do a bit of an overview of the awards, and then application components, and then as we go through the application components, I'm going to ask some of our current our panelists in order to be able to speak from their perspective on what has been going on from their experience of this, and then help give you all some guidance. And then we're going to go through all these questions, the criteria, and then do a Q&A. Before we get to that, I'm going to, Ezra, you want to actually do an introduction of yourself?
Yes, I figured it out. I'm sorry, guys. I was a little bit delayed trying to find the link. I didn't realize it was in a table, so I apologize. My name is Ezra Hezekiah. I am the owner of Province 8 Art Studio here in Northwest Houston. I'm originally from Central America, multidisciplinary artist, and I primarily try to assist local artists in the community, regardless of their skill set, to grow and expand themselves, and to kind of build out the Houston landscape with local artists.
Thanks so much, Ezra. We're gonna go back to my little slideshow right now, and then as a reminder, the 2025 Artist Awards is the second and final round of our 25 artist awardees. Each of these awardees will receive $20,000 and an 18-month learning experience. We need to remind you all that this is not a project grant. This is about your work and your history as an artist and as a servant leader to our communities of color, particularly here in the 9-county region of Greater Houston. The awardees will actually demonstrate the rich diversity and potential of Houston's BIPOC arts ecosystem, and that they are artist leaders whose work and service has benefited the Houston BIPOC communities. One of the things that we do want to recognize that the last year's process, we had almost 400 applications come in to only 25 awards. So it is one of the things that we want to be very conscious of. That it is a competitive application process, but all of your applications are really important for us to be able to advocate for the community and really understand the breadth and depth of what's happening here, and that we are learning a lot through your applications around the work that's happening, the work that is exciting, and also what are the places in which we can help advocate for you in the future in that space. So before I get to eligibility, Veronica, would you like to actually do a quick introduction of yourself? You're muted right now.
I'm Veronica Ibargüengoitia. I'm Mexican. I lived in Houston for about 14 years. Now I'm relocated at Denton because I'm finishing my master's in fine arts. I finished a master's in philosophy already. So I will be able to help anyone that needs in either Spanish or English. I'm a sculpture artist, and I'm really getting, like, I know the Houston art scene and everyone working out there, so I can, anything you need, you just shout, I will jump in.
Thank you, Veronica. So our panelists are a mixture of our lead readers and our community consultants, as well as prior awardees or both, and really trying to help provide some feedback and some perspective from an artist perspective about like the whole process. And many of them have been integral in helping to revise this process, revise the criteria, revise the language of this. So going back to just want to be clear around this. And one of the things, like Veronica, thank you. Like as living in Denton, one of the reasons why she is ineligible in order to be able to apply for this award. And you have to. We are looking for residents of the 9-county region and at least 2 years in this process, and that need to be at least 21 years of age by last or 2 weeks ago. I don't remember that way. Part of this is that it is about, like, we are building a thriving BIPOC arts ecosystem, and it is a commitment not only to each other, but to this city, and that the money and the investment is by investing in each of these artists and the artist awardees, they continue to invest in the city and continue to invest in our ecosystem. Briefly, the application elements, we have three narrative questions, no, one artistic statement, 2 narrative questions, and 2 short answer questions. You have work samples, and then you have 2 statements of support. We're going to start with the statements of support. These are important, you all. And we named this first, is that we encourage you, in order to be thinking about, after we go through this information session, encourage you to start reaching out to those people that you would like to invite to be your advocate, and to be able to step up in order to support you in this process. They can be individuals, they can be collaborators, creative partners, mentors, community members, anyone who can speak to your artistic and creative productions. So part of the things that we are asking for, these do not have to be people with significant title, capital T, or titles at significant organizations. They can be whomever makes sense to actually continue to support your narrative and support the work, and can actually testify to the benefits that you've had to the community and to your work. Let's see. Oh yeah, there's the next statement here. Is that, again, these are some of the questions that we encourage you to think through as to who can tell your work matter to them or the community. How do they describe it so that it's exciting and true to your work? And recognize that it's not a professional reference. It's actually about testifying, sharing that information. The advocate questions that we have, like in the applicant worksheet on the last page, these are the advocate questions, so that when you share the advocate and they get an email, these are some of the guiding questions that we have for them. Is that how can you, as the artist and the applicant, contribute to the vibrancy and thriving of your community? Tell us stories, tell us how it worked. I'm going to stop screen, and I'm actually going to go to some of our panelists and see if they can add to any ideas as to suggestions of who to ask for, or who to ask, or how to begin a conversation with your potential advocate. Lube.
I'd actually say, for any of those of you that are considering applying and looking at this particular focus, the advocacy part is exactly that. Somebody not necessarily a colleague that you have worked with, but if you've collaborated with outside community organizations, individual communities themselves at large, individuals as well. The way I remember working with mine was reaching out to individuals who weren't actually in charge of community spaces, but actual individuals who had seen the work that we had done together, and that could speak to like the long-term effect that it had for their whatever they were working on. Because I am a writer, the individuals that I was looking at considering were folks who had attended any workshops that I had put together, folks who had witnessed or watched performances that had been created under any of the works that I had worked on, but so that who can be there to actually speak on the reflective element of like what that work is happening while it's been happening.
Thanks, Lupe. Veronica or Miriam?
In my case, and I feel that it could be someone that really witnessed your work and really knows you deeply, in terms of the community action that you are doing, and also someone that I think we asked for 2 letters. So one of them, it could be someone that you impact their life. And that will be really awesome, because coming from the community and coming from someone that witnessed your work, it could be so powerful. And for example, someone that saw me marching, and that march changed the life of the person, and since that moment, that person starts changing a lot of things in their life. It could be so powerful. That is a good example.
Thank you, Miriam.
Or the example.
Veronica, would you like to add?
Yeah, I would expand on what Miriam and Lupe were mentioning. Like what we are looking for is like people that can attest of your work, can attest of the impact in society, more than the quality in terms of artistic, the impactful in a social change. So if they can expand in their writing with a story, as they were mentioning, and specific examples, that will be really good, because we can picture, the readers can picture in their mind what was happening in that moment of time, that it's really difficult to understand when we're seeing only images of maybe paintings or maybe performances or maybe writings. But if we read a story with specific narratives of what you are doing and the impact with the people around the community, that is really what we are looking for.
Thanks, Veronica. Ezra, anything that you want to add to that?
Yes. For me, when I submitted my application and I thought about the letters and who I was going to request my letters from, I wanted to compare and contrast the perspective of how somebody from the outside saw me as an artist, and saw my contributions to the community. So what I did was I selected a colleague that I had worked with over 20 years that wasn't into the arts at all. This was a business colleague that was in the real estate spectrum, but they saw me develop as an artist and saw my contributions within the community. And I had no idea how this person's perspective of me was, because I've never asked them before. But I figured that they had enough of a relationship with me, and they had seen me work over 2 decades in the community to have their own idea as to what my contributions were and how they saw me as an artist. So I selected, that person because of the longevity of the relationship and the tenure that was there for them to understand me as an artist and my body of work and my contributions. And then I also selected somebody who I had just recently met within maybe 8 months or 12 months of me submitting my application. It was actually a client of mine who wanted to utilize my studio for community purposes, artistic purposes. They were, and they had actually kind of lobbied me and had advised me that they had seen my work and they were following me as an artist, but wanted to utilize my gallery space so that they could open up a forum for poets and creatives. And so I never really understood what it was in totality that they saw of me or of my work from an artist because I didn't really know them. They were, just recent clients that reached out to me wanting to use the space, but they seemed that they were excited about what I was doing in the community. So I think that they had a very unique perspective that I had no type of relationship with, and that they would be able to give insight from a very non-biased relationship standpoint as to, what my community service looked like. And I just felt that that was really fair assessments from both sides of the spectrum for me to request them to submit letters.
Thanks so much, Ezra. Thank you for those perspectives, because I think that part of it is like one is that I love the fact that there is a surprise to what they like. There's an invitation to this to actually for them to actually speak about your work and actually to demonstrate the surprise, the support, and engagement of this aspect. When we talk about the impact, it's not just about it's not necessarily about transformative, like you're changing the world. It is about how they change, how you change their lives, how you impacted or influenced or resonate in their spaces. It can be big, it can be intense, and it can be deep. I will also name the fact that one of the advocate letters that touched me last year came from a student, and it was an incredible just testimony from a letter from them actually talking about how important it was to be in this person's class, in this workshop, and actually be able to be exposed into the art. So that is another opportunity to be thinking about it, like how does the advocate that you're bringing into this actually continue to add to the narrative of what you were saying in all of the other questions that were coming up. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go to the other components of the application, and then we can talk a little bit more to our panelists in a second. So work samples and artistic statement. There is another information session from last year that I think is still very valuable in relationship to work samples and artistic statements. So I encourage you to go into look at that if you have any questions. We're not going to spend much time on it today. We're going to talk about the narrative questions. So this has shifted a little bit. So what does it mean for you to be part of and work in the Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian Pacific Islander, Middle Eastern, North African, and/or communities of color, and how your work impacts and serves them? So what we have done now is that in the application worksheet, you actually have guiding questions. So hopefully these guiding questions will help provide opportunities for you to think about the broader network and the broader narrative of what we're asking for. It is not asking for a project. It is not talking about what it is. It is actually talking about the history of your work and what your work means. If a project helps to embody what it is that you are doing, you can use that as an example, but we are not funding a project. We are funding your continued work and your sustained presence and opportunities in the city and in the greater Houston area. I'm going to go to the next question, and then we'll open it up to our panelists. Please share your top contributions to the community from 2022 to now, and you might name the communities and our primary community partners that have served or worked with. So this is a little bit of a different question that we had asked last year, but it still kind of resonates. Look at the guiding questions in relationship to looking back on your work. The reason why we're asking about the past 2 years is we're looking for recent. We're talking about where are you now, what is important to you now, and how are you working? If you don't have it, there are many things and many reasons why you might not necessarily want to go a little bit further back. that's fine. Like, you don't have to be about just 2022, but it is about recent work, or how some of the recent work builds on some of your, like, the previous work, and focus on that aspect so that we actually, and the readers, can have a better sense of where you are now and where you hope to be going, or what we're investing in now in order to be able to help invest into the where you're going to be going into that aspect. Oh, that was the right. Did I do this one right? And oh, that's learning community. Sorry, we're gonna. Oh, I'll just go to quick. The learning community questions is that what do you wish to contribute to the learning community with the other grantees, or how do you currently contribute to the BIPOC arts leadership in Houston's communities to make our communities more ideal to work and thrive in? I think this is this I think the biggest language change is in this question. And I think it helps to actually think about this as to what are you doing in order to help all of the BIPOC communities to be more ideal and to thrive in. That through what is your servant leadership, what is your engagement, how does that actually show up in order to continue to build a thriving BIPOC arts ecosystem? How are you contributing to that? What is your work say in this? Let's speak one, let me, I'm gonna stop the share. Yes, I'm going to be clear that let's clarify your work, your creative work does not have to be community specific. Your creative work could be whatever, as long as how you are showing up into the greater Houston area continues to be able to build a thriving BIPOC arts ecosystem. So you can be making paintings and do a whole lot of other leadership, and through other leadership in terms of your workshops, in terms of your in terms of classes, in terms of the space that you engage, or in the space that you mentor or lift up other people. Those are like, that is part of, for us, for many of us, that is significant work. It is not just about a product. It is about investing in each other and investing in our communities. And that's what we're hoping that you actually create a narrative around and share that narrative. Our panelists, others, how would you like to expand on these ideas in relationship to the narratives and how people can be able to approach their narrative?
So you in phrasing it for the context for the application process itself, I looked to not only the practice of creating workshop spaces and then allowing myself to be available for particular protests or vigils or things that were occurring within the community, but also how I was able to support other writers by providing blurbs for local writers if their books were about to come out, reviewing others' works, serving on editorial boards. So all the serving in community doesn't have to be the front-facing end of it also. So list all the things that you're doing in the behind-the-scenes work that uplifts as much of the BIPOC arts community as you can. Like, those are the invisible things that we don't normally say out loud, but it's the work that we're all doing behind the scenes. Like, if we're not creating our own shows, we're supporting other people's things. So all of that is worth mentioning and listing, because it's helping to build a thriving system.
Thanks, Lupe. I love the idea. Part of the work for the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund is visibilizing the invisible, is actually is helping to validate and name all of the work that's happening, and not just what happens on the stage, not what happens on the page, not what just happens on, like, in the galleries. Veronica?
Yeah, also I'm thinking, like, some people are not, their practice is not related into performance activities or teaching, but all their research work is based on giving, like, a more profound or deep meaning to BIPOC communities. So that's also something to consider. Like, if the research it's related to migration themes or things like diaspora things, that they can really are deepening in those concepts, and they are opening and, like, letting people know these concepts with their work, this is also valid.
Thanks, Veronica. Ezra, Miriam, yeah.
I want to mention that they will be so surprised because I feel like it's a good exercise to write everything that they doing during the year, because also it's because you will feel so good about it, and I feel like we need to acknowledge every single thing that we do in the community, and like they say, working for the community, sometimes working in your house, thinking about a lot of things. So just write down everything that you did, and you will surprise everything that you will see in that page. And you don't need to submit everything, but it's gonna be a good exercise that will help you to understand in where you are, because sometimes we think that we are not doing a lot, and we are doing a lot. So if you are here, it's because you are part of this.
Thanks, Miriam. Again, like it's a beautiful idea exercise in order to list and name all the things and recognize all the parts of the work that you do in order to be able to make things happen. And that's actually part of a recognition of, as Lupe said, the connecting of those components and the building of that is an essential part of building a thriving BIPOC arts ecosystem. And it's not, so how do we continue to think about all of those stories in the ways that you're relating to your narrative about your history of work, and the way that you're talking about how you work and serve, and how your leadership actually shows up in the community. To us, those expressions, those ideas are connected to an ongoing history of servant leadership that is of value to so many of our communities of color. By supporting others, we are actually continuing to lift up our communities. And I think that that's part of what we'd like to name. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, I think, just to kind of reiterate what Miriam just said, is that, for me, when I went through this process, it was new, and I was very active, and I had never really described or written down what I was doing, who I was working with, and what kind of impacts that was having for me or for other people's lives. So I think it is a great exercise to detail what you are doing and how your work is being impactful. I think it's also really good to be able to identify and to stay like in the present, right? To look and say, hey, this is what I'm currently doing. Like, not thinking about your lofty goals or thinking about future aspirations or ambitions, but really identifying where you're at, what you're doing, and who you're impacting in the present. Because I think it paints a really good picture of, hey, I've got a goal to, to change the Houston landscape in the next 15 years and make it this beautiful utopia. But realistically, that's a stretch. Realistically, boots on the ground, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing, and this is who's currently being impacted. And when you look at it that way, you'll really see where your work is beneficial and who's on the receiving end of that benefit, right? So, and I think that just keeps it present, that keeps it clear, and that paints a really good picture of what you're doing now.
Thanks so much, y'all. Again, I'm going to ask you all, if you have questions, please use the Q&A box in the chat, because by putting the Q&A in the Q&A box, everybody gets to see the questions to that, and then we get to actually share the answers with everybody, and we will get to some of those in just a bit. Review criteria. I want to be clear around that. Check the review criteria in the guidelines on the website everywhere. And that what we want to be clear around is that we do not have specific examples of, we do not have only a simple stellar example of what all this means. We believe that the criteria is a guideline, and that it is up to, we hoping that you, and through your narrative, through your work samples, through your advocate letter, actually are demonstrating how you represent these criteria. how you actually are able to live into the history of service and support, how that you are continuing to geared toward thriving community rather than individual gain, and that that this is about how you have a history and commitment to artistic activity and production, and a commitment to learning, offering expertise, and engaging with others in a productive and active manner. You tell us how all of those things resonate within your work and your practice, and that's what we were trying to hope to see in order to be able to make that happen. Want to be clear also that the way that we do our review process, we are reviewing you against the criteria, not against each other. And that our hope is that this is what you need to be focused on, and recognize that the best that you can do in terms of the narrative and against these criteria are really how to show up and like how to show up best in these application processes. And that yes, and that eventually it is a place in which that we will have to go from the large amount down to, again, just 25. But the more that you are focused on how you and your narrative embodies the criteria, or how your work is how the criteria is embodied in your work, that's, I think, more of what the focus can be. So just in terms of the refinements and clarification, we wanted to, again, are framing service as leadership with a focus on supporting others in the uplifting community by contributing to the BIPOC arts ecosystem. If you go into our FAQ pages, that like eventually you'll also see that we talked about leadership and service can show up. Service can show up in multiple ways. Leadership is one of them. But one of the things that we're now recognizing is that each and every one of those ideas of healing, mentorship, service, education, and support, all of these are leadership qualities and leading into our communities. And that's what we want to continue for you to be able to recognize. And how do we, as artists, as creatives, as community members, continue to show how we are leading what the future can be of our communities by doing this work in service of each other. Again, we talked about the narrative question, and then the artist cohort and learning community. The learning community guiding question is, how can our collective knowledge transform the artistic landscape of Greater Houston? We are looking for folks who can continue to add to that question, who can continue to help us, help each other really think about what does it mean for collective knowledge transform the artistic landscape of Greater Houston. If you go through our guidelines, we are more clear around what the artist cohort experience is about, and because we've actually done it. So I'm going to stop the share and actually share. It's like, in terms of the artist cohort, I think that we want to name that there are historic frameworks in which we actually work in terms of philosophically. We think about abundance theory. We think about critical thinking. We think about adaptive learning. All of these things around, not about it's an idea in order to help all of us move from a space of just survival into a space of thriving. How do we, as artists, all working into a space, move from the historic lack, a space of historic lack, and a space of historic scarcity, into places of possibility, into places of dreaming, into places of resourcing each other? We also utilize ideas of and center artistic practice, and recognize thinking about theater of the oppressed, thinking about play theory, thinking about how art is utilized in this work, so that we are not showing up as an administrator or as an artist, that we are actually recognizing how do we bring some of these things together in total. It is a learning process, and we continue to learn with you in that space. Miriam, Ezra, is there anything that you actually want to share in relationship to reflect on the cohort experience?
In the cohort experience, sorry?
Yeah, just talk about, like, what has it, in terms of the general cohort experience, what has been, and talk about how it has been, and in relationship to, like, the narratives that we're talking about in relationship to the applicant experience, how has been a reflection? How has the Artist Cohort experience also helped to reflect back in terms of the ways in which we've refined the guidelines, refined the questions?
Okay, I have a lot in my mind right now. So I'm sorry, I have
No worries.
ADHD, and it's a lot in my mind because I've been thinking about how was my whole experience in the whole process, and actually it's been so beautiful because I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people that I didn't know, and that make me a general idea that what is going on in the community. So what was the question again, Sixton? Sorry.
So I think that it just kind of, I think part of what happened was that last year when everybody applied, we had talked about the Artist Cohort experience, and we talked in very much in the abstract because it hadn't happened. And that
Yes.
and that we had talked around what were the hopes and what were the theories that we had in order to make that in order to build a cohort experience. We understand the benefit. We understood other models of what a cohort experience was. What we now have is actually a lot of practice and a lot more experience within the space. And we have actually utilized that practice and experience in order to clarify what we believe is the experience and what other people can expect in that space. I would say that like part of the thing is that the cohort experience is it's not just a social hour. Like it's not just social time. It is about us coming, like we're asking you all to be thinking about as leaders in our community, as artists and as leaders, as thinkers, as creatives, as people and like active citizens. What does it mean in order to be an artist? What does it mean in order to be able to support each other? How do we build a supportive network? And what does that mean not only within the cohort, but how can that actually influence the building and the building of a support network outside of just the 25, or how does that, like, how do we connect other support networks? So I think that those are some of the things. Ezra, you
I
came up
think
with.
our network is stronger right now because of that. So we have a stronger network, and our community, we built a community that it was already there. But we now I feel comfortable working with people that I never imagined that I was working with, you know, like, and we are, our community, Houston, which is one community, is working together right now, but also respecting the diversity and the boundaries that we need, and highlighting our necessities. So I think we learn a lot, but we also share our experiences and our diversities and our specific necessities. I learn a lot from other people, and they learn a lot from me, and based in that, we recognize that the spectrum of Houston is so huge. So we cannot limit anything. That's one.
Thanks, Miriam. Ezra?
Yeah, I would say I see a question in here that says practically what will the cohort experience look like? What am I committing to? So I think what we're, what the first group of 25 didn't know what we were committing to. We definitely committed to working with each other. We committed to showing up and to trying to figure out, what we were going to do. I think that we've spent now the last 8 months, almost a year now, trying to identify what is going to, what does Houston look like currently, and what can we make it look like, right? If we work together, right? I think that we've assessed and we've taken a look at the art landscape and the ecosystem of Houston, and we've identified, what works well. We've identified what doesn't work well. And this is the work that we have done collectively to work amongst each other. We've shown up vulnerable, right? I think part of being part of this cohort is to show up vulnerable and to show up open-minded, Because I think as an artist, sometimes we get pigeonholed into our own practice or into our own way of doing things. And, you know, this is a very, very interesting, you know, process and project and experiment that BANF has put together, right? It's really what it is. It's an experiment to see how can we make our artistic community better. And, you know, as being part of this first wave, I had no idea what I was getting into personally. And it's kind of scary because you want the money. Everybody wants the money because it's going to help it's going to help what you're doing. But part of this is beyond the money, right? Because the money helps you maybe with what you've got going on, but what does it do for the rest of the community? So that the cohort in itself is this experience where you get to work with all of these great minds, these great artistic geniuses in their own right. And you say, and you come together and you say, hey, like this is our neighborhood. This is our backyard. How can we make it better? What idea do you have? What idea do I have? How can we take our ideas, mesh them together and create and build something new? Because nobody's coming to save us, right? We need to work together to create new ideas, to change our landscape, to make that better for us and to make that better for future generations of artists. And so what I've learned from this is really how to really show up and be present and how to show up, and contribute what I'm experiencing from my vantage point, in hopes that these ideas and these experiences can be bounced off of other artists, right? And we can learn together, and then we can create new practices, create new procedures, talk about different things that we can institute to make our communities better and to expand the arts ecosystem beyond its current borders.
Thanks, Ezra. Thanks for helping to describe the experience. And Lupe, I was waiting just to make sure, like, you wanted to add something.
I was opening my kids' V8 twist. Okay, so everything Ezra said and everything Medium said, that pretty much encompasses all of it. I think one of the levels of things that helps with, I guess, the return on the application process is the shot in the dark with this first cohort was us trying to figure out what exactly we were going to be doing together as a whole group. And a lot of it, I will say, that I think will occur and will help refine reflectively with the application process, even in the future go around, is having the opportunity to observe and listen and be presented with questions not exactly about our practice and craft as artists, but reflective questions where we're discussing and looking at our relationship to what our craft is and into the community spaces that we're working in, right? And so I found myself not pleasantly surprised. What's the other? Totally excited. That's it. With getting to hear other individuals with such striking, sharp craft understanding discuss what it means to create and work with very similar obstacles or advantages, or coming from very dissimilar instances. We were also looking at the practice and experience level of artists who've been working for 40 plus years, 30 plus years, 20 plus years. And so looking at what that means in a changing landscape that is the service area of the 9 counties. And so a lot of listening and taking to heart, a lot of note taking, a lot of posed questions like, what can we use to define what this BIPOC arts community looks like, right? And so I think all of that helps shift back towards what the application process look like, because it helps us refine what is it we're looking for future applicants. And I think the first go around, it gave us the opportunity to kind of sit with one another and meditatively celebrate that, like, here we are together as a whole group, but then also sit back and like listen, truly listen, in terms of what it is that we're all creating and working on and have experienced. And I think that was an eye-opener to both sigh in relief that, like, there's other people doing stuff the way I do, but then also like take a shiver when I hear that other artists have had to go completely different routes that I hadn't considered. And so I think it's both the conundrum and the bright side of doing this work within a cohort. It's not necessarily a product-based cohort. You're thinking in terms and doing and creating, but it's posed with both theory and practice questions. And there's nothing that solidifies a thing that you're going to create at the end of this. A lot of this is just the note-taking and community building forward, for the future of your own craft, and then the future of the arts network within the 9 counties.
Thanks, Lupe. And like, exactly, it is not a product-based, like, it is a process-based work. We are investing in questions, we're investing in inquiry, we're investing each other. It is also about, hopefully it helps refine your own practice, and it also helps, we think, like, how does your practice and intersect with others? How are you thinking beyond just, like, how are you thinking across, beyond, through, around, and so many of these opportunities. And this is also why we are, like, again, stressing the idea about leadership. It is really thinking around, how do you as artists take, are empowered in order to make change and to create a thriving ecosystem. Not only just, like, it's easy to say a thriving ecosystem, but what are you doing in order to make the world, like the communities that you're living in, better? What are you, how are you contributing to not just around a surviving idea anymore, but actually what are the ways in which we're helping to, like, go into what does thriving look like? What does it mean to be, yeah, well, there's a whole lot more things, but I'm gonna, before I get into any of that, I think that I want to name some of the information, like some of the applicant support aspects. While I talk about these things, throw some more Q&A, like, questions in the Q&A, and we can get to some of that in a second. These are, like, there are many information sessions, and that's actually one of the things where if you go to this site, or actually go to our website, in order to be able to see, like, there are at least 5, 6 other information sessions that are planned throughout the next few weeks. There are applicant supports, like, there are in-person sessions, there are virtual sessions, there are sessions in Spanish, there are sessions that are bilingual. They are, like, so there are a number of different places in different areas. We know that Shape Center is going to host some, Anderson Center for the Arts is hosting some, so that there will also be much. Please check out our website or on the newsletter in order to talk about what that is. Go to support.houstonbanf.org, where for our FAQs. Right now, it's like FAQs are not completely populated. We'll be working on that again, like looking at the examples and from the prior round in order to bring forward. But keep on going. If you look at last year's, there's a whole lot of questions that we answered in there, and there's a whole lot of hopefully helpful guides as to whatever question that you all provided. If we can give a public answer to it, we put it into the FAQ last year or last time. There are now 15-minute one-on-one help sessions are now available. So please go to the website in order to sign up for those 15-minute one-on-one help sessions. They are only 15 minutes, so please think about them as targeted. Look at your guidelines, think about the application workshop, be clear around what is the objective within that 15 minutes, because 15 minutes can go very fast. So be aware of what you need to do this, and then that will be that space. And then also there are other, again, information sessions, applicant workshops. Sign up for the newsletter. One of the things that let me stop. One question that we continue to get is, if I applied the first round, can I use the same application? And a simple answer, yes. Do what you like. We're not asking you to do much more labor. But if you are here, if you see this aspect, this is an opportunity in order to refine and reflect on your practice in the past year and a half, 2 years, or whatever. Think about the questions that we've provided in terms of guiding questions, and how can the narrative and your responses before, are they still relevant? Do they still answer the questions, like the guiding questions? Do they still, like, are they the best answer that you can give to the criteria as it's stated now? I would encourage, you know, same thing. I would also just be careful around the application letters and like these advocacy letters. If they're still relevant, sure, makes sense. If they were a job reference, I would encourage you not to utilize that and think about something that can be more targeted and more in line with the narrative that you're building in this process. Let's see. Yes, and so what other questions do we have? Yes, so in terms of the one-on-one, yeah, you're going to be asked a focus question for your one-on-one session. So we did have a question earlier around for the people who had actually applied last year, and if they can get feedback. And unfortunately, the answer is no. We cannot give individualized feedback for last year's. And part of this, and I'll just be clear around, we were overwhelmed last year with the applications. We did not expect 390 applications, and still, I am still the only full-time staff member of the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund. We have a number of consultants and community organizers in this aspect. We were not prepared for the number of applications, nor were we prepared in order to, the systems that we had set up had not actually been able to get the feedback so that it would actually be useful for anybody in that space, or be able to, we had no system in order to be able to translate any feedback that we had on applications in order to be able to be helpful to the applicant. So unfortunately, we don't have that. And part of this is that we are trying to engage prior applications, you know, the artist awardees from last year, in order to help guide some of these and provide that feedback, to provide insight into how to make this, how to improve a process, or at least provide insight from a first person standpoint in that aspect. We believe and hope that in the system that we have set up now, and what we're going to be working with the community reviewers, will actually be able to provide some form of feedback. We are trying to make that happen. Again, we hope, that is a hope. I'm not sure if we can actually, I can't promise that right now, but we are working toward that in order to be able to do that. I understand that that is disappointing. I understand that not getting feedback on your application is disappointing. As a person who's applied and written a whole lot of grants, I understand that aspect. I am just saying that unfortunately we can't, in terms of the infrastructure that we had in order to be able to do that. We encourage you to look and read over the application that you had last year in light of the information that was shared today, in light of the guiding questions, and think about, like, as Lupe and Ezra and Miriam and Veronica said, think about how you show up, not just in the theater and in the product and that work, but what is the encompassing of your work, and work with a capital W, and not just your artistic practice, but how are you really supporting building a thriving BIPOC arts ecosystem? How are you contributing to that? And in what ways are you able to share around that practice, and not just a specific creative output in that space? Any other, so we had one other question, and I think that there was another question that came in the chat, but not to the Q&A, that we need to answer?
I don't know of any unanswered question. I'll look, but I'm not seeing anything that we haven't addressed.
Okay, so hopefully that thank you to our panelists, to Veronica, Miriam, Ezra, Lupe. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you for being vulnerable around that work. Thank you for sharing your insight. Hopefully that you found that insight to be helpful in the process, and informative. I'm going to say that like we hope that this process, we don't want it to be labor intensive, but we do hope, like as Miriam and Ezra said, by going through some of these questions, listing some of your work, that this is actually not it is a benefit of like it adds to a long-term benefit of how you think about your work and how you can think broadly about your work and not just around one way of operating. And it is hopefully in that engagement and that encouragement and that opportunity that we will be able to, like, you will be able to find new insight, new inspiration, new generations, and new ways of being like an interconnectedness with others and others' work. Miriam, you had a comment?
I want to add two things. One is like, don't discourage yourself because you didn't get anything last year. And think that it's a beautiful opportunity that a lot of people that maybe didn't know anything about you will read your work. And it's a beautiful opportunity to be present. And second, you don't need to be the president, the CEO, or the founder of something to work with the community and to be impactful in the life of someone. And because comments that I'm receiving in the community is like, oh, but there is a president or founder or everybody knows. No, it's a lot of people working in the community, and they don't need to be the senior or the founder of everything. So think about everything that you do in your daily basis. I think is a good exercise just for your ego, just for your self-esteem, and you can begin from there.
Thank you so much. Any other last words from our panelists? Again, thank you so much for your experience in this, and thank you all for being here. We appreciate your presence, and we look forward to reading your applications and seeing your work. Everybody take care.